Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The Supreme Court has declined to hear the California Republican Party's lawsuit over Prop 50. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi, and this finalizes the new congressional map voters approved that favors Democrats ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. Public Matters reporter Jake Gatta spoke with the chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party about what that means for races here.
California's new congressional map is here to stay. The Supreme Court is letting the map that voters approved with Prop 50 stand. In December, they also let the map that Texas drew stand, saying that maps drawn for partisan advantage are allowed. That means all 5 districts here in San Diego will have more registered Democrats than Republicans. But that doesn't mean the races are already decided.
We still have to make sure that our message resonates with the people. We're still going to have to be talking to people to make sure that they are on board with electing a Democrat to Congress in order to check the cruel Trump administration.
Will Rodriguez Kennedy is the chair of the San Diego County Democratic Party. He says there's still work to be done ahead of the election and after.
The reality is, in this country, the wealthy have been getting wealthier, the more powerful have been getting more powerful, and people need to see a Democratic Party that fights for them. So that's what we're going to get to convince people that we're going to do. When that happens, we need to start acting like it.
San Diego's current congressional delegation is 4 Democrats and 1 Republican, Darrell Issa. He wasn't available for comment. But candidates are already lining up to run against him in the 48th district. And between them, they're raising millions of dollars for what's shaping up to be a very expensive election. Ballots will go out starting in May, and the primary is on June 2nd. And we'll have more coverage of the election leading up to that at kpbs.org. Jake Gatta, KPBS News.
And Public Matters is a partnership with KPBS, iNewsSource, and Voice of San Diego. You can see more of our stories at kpbs.org/Public Matters. The YouTuber behind the viral Minneapolis Somali daycare video that coincided with the immigration surge there is reportedly about to publish a video about San Diego. KPBS reporter Andrew Dyer spoke to a misinformation expert who says if this video is like the last, people should be skeptical.
Right-wing influencer Nick Shirley's December video alleging fraud at Somali daycares was short on evidence and long on speculation. The allegations were used by conservative politicians and media outlets to justify the deadly immigration crackdown in Minneapolis. Why did Shirley's video have such an impact?
I think the timing of Nick Shirley's video in Minneapolis was very politically convenient for the Trump administration and its other allies in right-wing media.
Jared Holt researches how information spreads online. He says it's no accident that Shirley was unknown before his childcare video went viral.
Nick Shirley and people like Nick Shirley live in, are making careers in a online media ecosystem that rewards sensationalism, that rewards being inflammatory, and that rewards affirming the biases of what they think their audience is.
San Diego's home to the second largest Somali immigrant population after Minneapolis. Last week, Shirley reportedly surveilled daycares in San Diego with Amy Reichert. She's a local conservative activist, influencer, and former political candidate. She told Real America's Voice she convinced Shirley to come after researching San Diego daycare inspection reports.
And that's when I reached out to Nick Shirley and I said, come on out to California.
She said on Facebook, Shirley's video will be out next week. Holt says people should pay attention to how things are said in any video, not just what is said.
If it's anything like this Minneapolis video, it's bound to include suggestions, a bunch of, filming of locations or people and saying, isn't that weird? Isn't that strange?
The state says it has rigorous fraud detection systems, and allegations like the absence of children are not indicative of fraud. Reichert declined to be interviewed. In a statement, she says she hasn't claimed to have found fraud. Holt says Shirley's not an independent journalist, but someone who produces videos with a political agenda.
I would encourage people to keep that in mind and take it with a Margaritaville-sized, grain of salt.
Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
President Donald Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, announced the Department of Homeland Security will immediately withdraw hundreds of personnel from Minnesota. Homan added that a total drawdown would depend on cooperation with local and state law enforcement. Ivan Rodriguez has the latest.
Effective immediately, the Department of Homeland Security has announced it will withdraw some personnel from Minnesota.
We'll draw down 700 people effective today.
Operation Metro Surge saw roughly 3,000 DHS personnel deployed to Minneapolis in December. The conduct of some of those agents quickly sparked outrage among residents and led to the fatal shootings of 2 U.S. citizens. Border czar Tom Homan was deployed to Minneapolis following the killing of Alex Preddy less than 2 weeks ago.
My goal with the support of President Trump is to achieve a complete drawdown, but that is largely contingent upon the end of the illegal and threatening activities against ICE.
Homan says the administration plans to roll out body-worn cameras nationwide, beginning with a focused deployment in Minneapolis. He added that an internal review revealed inconsistencies in how officers used body cameras.
Some officers and agents had them, some didn't. That inconsistency was unacceptable, so we moved immediately to prioritize full body cam deployment in the city.
Paying for body cameras is one of the key issues before Congress as they debate the use of body cams for DHS. On Tuesday, President Trump signed a spending package into law, ending the partial government shutdown, but pushing the can down the road for DHS's budget. Trump and Democrats now have 2 weeks to strike an agreement or face another shutdown for the department that includes agencies from TSA to FEMA. Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
And Homan says targeted enforcement operations will focus on national security and public safety threats. But he also added those who are in the country illegally are not off the table.
I'm Ariella Scalise, and coming up tonight, clouds increase, which prevents our overnight lows from being all that cool after a nearly record-setting day for a lot of locations, 55 degrees overnight. Coming up, we'll talk about the winds diminishing, what's ahead for the weekend, and even looking further ahead into the middle of the month. We have those details coming up.
We're getting an early look at some of the data from this year's point-in-time count, and the results may be promising. The San Diego River Park Foundation says the number of unhoused people counted along the San Diego River is way down. The point-in-time count is a one-day annual snapshot of the homelessness crisis in San Diego. But the San Diego River Foundation does a seasonal census of those staying along the riverbed.
When we counted in the fall, in September just of 2025, we counted 294 people living in the San Diego Riverbed, and now we're seeing 148. So that's a huge impact and a huge, break for the river, which is really not a place that's meant for human habitation.
The City of San Diego's Homelessness Strategies Solutions Department told our media partner KGTV that it believes the money and effort put into the riverbed is the reason for the reduction. The entire point-in-time count data is expected to be released this spring. San Diego is on track to end its current fiscal year in a deficit. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has more on what the shortfall will mean for city residents.
Parking fees in Balboa Park have been one of San Diego's hottest controversies in recent memory. But last June, a supermajority on the city council agreed the fees were necessary to avoid more painful budget cuts. The council even called for the fees to start in October, 3 months earlier than Mayor Todd Gloria had proposed. Ultimately, the fees were delayed until January, and that delay has contributed to the city's budget shortfall. Overtime spending by the police, fire, and transportation probation departments is also over budget. But the biggest shortfall in expected city revenue is from hotel taxes.
When the budget was adopted, we noted the volatility our tourism sector has been experiencing, especially given the impacts of our federal government's posturing towards other countries and the impacts that could have on international travel. Unfortunately, we now seem to be seeing this being borne out in our actual revenues.
The city's financial picture could improve before the fiscal year ends on June 30th, but that doesn't seem likely, meaning the city will have to dip into its reserves to balance this year's budget. And cuts to services next fiscal year will also be necessary. Library and rec center hours could be reduced, and repairs to infrastructure may be delayed. Councilmember Sean Ela Rivera said he wants to protect services for less affluent neighborhoods.
There's no doubt on my end at least, that we're in a situation where we have to make tough decisions, and that those tough decisions will have consequences. But as always, I want to make sure we're being thoughtful about where those consequences are felt.
Some city council members are still saying they want to repeal the parking fees in Balboa Park. Others want to suspend the fees for city residents while keeping them in place for non-residents. Either move would mean less revenue for the city, requiring spending cuts to go even deeper. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
The city of San Diego is suing the Department of Justice over what it calls unconstitutional requirements on a grant to fight internet crimes against children. As KPBS reporter Alexander Nguyen tells us, the new requirements are unrelated to the grant.
As a tourist and border city, San Diego is a hotspot for human trafficking. The FBI ranks the region as the 13th worst in the nation for sexual exploitation of children, which is why San Diego City Attorney Heather Riverbed says the DOJ money is crucial.
It's a little more than $500,000. Very important work that SDPD is doing to keep children safe, quickly follow up on tips and crimes, rescue victims.
According to the suit, the DOJ is asking the city to, quote, provide unspecified access to U.S. Department of Homeland Security agents and comply with DHS requests. Riverbed says those conditions were placed after the city was awarded the grant. She says those requirements are overly broad.
It doesn't give parameters on how we're supposed to work with the department, and doesn't necessarily take into consideration obligations that we have under state and local laws.
The city alleges that DHS could force the city to comply with civil immigration detainer requests, and that could open the city up to more lawsuits. Some courts have ruled that complying with civil immigration detainer requests without probable cause violates the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable searches and seizures. In a statement released today, the government says its current practices already provide Fourth Amendment protection. Riverbed also says the grant was approved by Congress, so the administration can't alter the requirements after the fact.
If Congress says these are the conditions of the grant, the presidential administration and the departments don't have legal authority under the constitutional separation of powers to then turn around and say, and we're going to add these conditions because we want to.
This is the latest of several lawsuits filed by the city against the federal government in the past year. San Diego's was joined in the lawsuit by the city of San Jose, which also faces the Trump administration's demands. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
In San Diego County, black defendants are more likely than white defendants to face charges that can lead to life in prison without parole, even for the same crime. In part 2 of this two-part series, KPBS reporter Katie Heisen looks at how that gap has widened under the current district attorney.
For people convicted of murder, special circumstance charges can mean the difference between the chance at parole and dying in prison. It wasn't something Daniel Troutfield used to worry about.
I thought that our system that would only, give them life without parole if the things that they had done were truly egregious.
Troutfield now directs the Special Circumstances Conviction Project at UCLA. He says there are about 5,000 people serving life without parole in California, far more than nearby states. When Troutfield started meeting them, they weren't who he expected.
These are people who are in wheelchairs, who are walking around prisons with walkers, who have, been there for decades. People who have fully rehabilitated, who are leading, rehabilitative work in California prisons.
He says the U.S. is one of the only Western countries to sentence people to life without parole. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, it doesn't deter crime. Troutfield says pulling together data to see patterns in these sentences is challenging.
Many county DA's offices haven't been, and in some ways are still not, particularly diligent in keeping records of the convictions and charges and sentences that they have administered.
And he says what records they do keep are hard to access.
We have to rely on data provided by the DA to then address the DA's history of racialized sentencing and charging.
Recently, his team received what he calls a windfall of data from San Diego County. All cases with at least one first-degree murder charge since 1996.
We went with a completely neutral eye towards these issues and found ultimately that the concerns that community members raised really bore out in the data.
Troutfield says the data show racial disparities in special circumstance charges are far more extreme in San Diego County than nearby counties like Los Angeles. San Diego's district attorney's office charges fewer people with special circumstances overall, but Troutfield says that means prosecutors have more discretion in who to charge.
The laws are so broad that essentially, a vast number of people are eligible for these specials, and it's at the complete discretion of the DA to bring those specials forward.
The data show this gap has gotten much wider under Summer Stephan than it was under the previous district attorney, Bonnie Dumanis.
Under Dumanis, Black people were essentially 5 times more likely to be exposed to life without parole through felony murder, versus under Summer Stephan, approximately 23 times more likely to be exposed to life without parole through felony murder. So that's a huge increase. And that increase doesn't really, can't really be explained by other types of changes in the county.
To control for possible differences between cases, his team then looked at all cases with 2 or more murder charges. Those are automatically eligible for a special circumstance. After Stephan took office, the rate of that charge against eligible people fell for every group, except for Black people. It rose for Black people by more than 17%. The public defender's office has accused the district attorney of having no standard criteria for when they charge specials, leaving the door wide open for bias. The district attorney's office declined an interview, but told KPBS by email that they charge special circumstances whenever there's enough evidence, regardless of race. They say the disparity doesn't reflect intentional choices by their office. State lawmakers passed the Racial Justice Act in 2020 to help reduce disparities in sentencing.
The problem is that oftentimes the district attorneys are opposing this work as fervently as they can and really don't want to see these sentences changed.
The Stanford Law Group and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund released an analysis in November. It says no California judge has granted a petition under the Racial Justice Act for disparate sentencing. Troutfield says the most effective tool to reduce these disparities is voting.
It's really important for people in San Diego to consider what DA best reflects the values of their community and really pay attention to how different DAs will enact their discretion.
San Diego will hold its next district attorney election in 2028. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
And that story is an example of KPBS's feature reporting. You can find more of it, as well as all of our other video content on YouTube. Subscribe and get notified when new content is posted. YouTube is also where we live stream KPBS Evening Edition, weeknights at 5.
Let's check out those weather headlines because a lot of us have been dealing with the warm and windy weather, and both of those do continue here. The winds do start to diminish, though, Thursday afternoon, and we will see temperatures start to drop off a little bit more. And even looking ahead to the middle of the month, middle part of February does look to be a bit cooler. Tonight, though, temperatures stay a little bit more elevated after a warm afternoon. Clouds increase. We're back down to only 56 in San Diego, dropping to 55 in Chula Vista, Oceanside at 46 degrees through tonight. Those gusty winds, we'll continue to be watching those, a magnitude of anywhere from 30 to 50 miles per hour. So continuing with that offshore Santa Ana wind, bringing us still some of those warmer temperatures and still that slightly higher fire risk just because the last 30 days, if not longer, have been dry after what was a pretty wet November into December for a lot of us. Wind advisory continues until noon on Thursday, so those gusty winds will continue, and so will the warmth across much of the southwest here. Still some record challenging warmth. We'll have temperatures dropping off a little bit more tomorrow compared to where we've been today. 74 in San Diego, Chula Vista, Oceanside with some clouds back to 75 degrees. Let's take a peek into the weekend here. It's bitter cold temperatures, the northeast and mid-Atlantic, even parts of the southeast, and some showers and rain returning across the northwest. A pretty nice weekend ahead for us. But then as we head into the middle of next week, watching a pretty big change across the country here. We'll start to get some cooler weather returning in across the West Coast, including here in Southern California. All right, brief dip in temperatures here in the short term Friday and Saturday before we return to the 70s along the coast on Sunday. Watch for a cloudier day on Monday. Further inland here after upper 70s Thursday, we'll drop off just a little bit Friday and Saturday before climbing back on Sunday with nice conditions by Monday. And we stay pretty chilly Friday and Saturday into the mountains before sunny and 50s return. And then across the desert locations here, we'll see a brief dip before temperatures climb back to the 80s on Sunday. For KPBS News, I'm Ariella Scalise.
I'm Jeff Bennett. Tonight on the NewsHour, global risks escalate with the treaty between the world's two largest nuclear powers set to expire. That's at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Well, the Seattle Seahawks face off against the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl this Sunday. The big game means big business. As Karen Kafer reports, viewers at home are expected to spend a little more on their snacks this weekend.
The National Retail Federation forecasts Super Bowl spending upwards of $20 billion this year, with the overwhelming bulk of that set to be spent on food and drink. Some popular proteins will be a little bit more expensive than last year, while other fan favorites will cost you less.
Football fans hosting family and friends for Sunday's big game will pay a little bit more overall for snacks than last year. The Wells Fargo Agri-Food Institute crunched the numbers on a spread for a party of 10. They found it will cost about $140, up 1.6% from 2025. Wells Fargo Food and Agriculture Chief Economist Michael Swanson says some fan favorites are trending lower.
Chicken wings got less expensive thanks to more supply. Avocados are down about 2.5% as well. Nachos are down, the chips are down.
Some proteins, Swanson says, have pushed higher, like shrimp.
We import most of the shrimp that we eat from a bunch of countries like India, Vietnam, Thailand, and it was kind of really low pricing last year, so it's bounced back. So up about 8% from a year ago.
And Stu Leonard Jr., president and CEO of the Stu Leonard supermarket chain, says sliders may be the best option for burgers because beef prices are still elevated.
Beef market is still a little bit high. It's a little tense out in the market, but that's a supply and demand issue.
Wells Fargo also found some fresh vegetables trending higher. Cherry tomatoes, celery, and cauliflower up between 2% and 4%. But there's better news for cheese lovers.
You can't have a Super Bowl party without a big cheese platter right here, okay?
Dairy prices have been falling, Leonard says, lowering the cost of that cheese platter.
The Wells Fargo survey noted that the year-over-year price increase for a Super Bowl spread is actually lower than the overall inflation rate. And average hourly wages have also ticked up in the last year. And that's going to give consumers a little bit more breathing room in their budgets to have some fun this weekend. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafer.
Final preparations for the Super Bowl are being made at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, but the big game experience is already underway in San Francisco. Luz Pena gives us a preview of what that's all about.
This is what you will see inside Moscone Center. You will be greeted by all the 32 NFL teams. Well, their helmets. And then you'll have a choice. To the right, the 40-yard dash, which means I gotta warm up. Turns out the record is 4.2 seconds. Let's try it out. All right, 8 seconds. That's double, you guys. And if you keep walking, you basically run into an NFL museum. And we found our guy, George Kittle. Over 90,000 people are expected to travel to the Bay Area for the Super Bowl and all the fun before it. We met the first people in line at Moscone Center.
We were looking at the TV from yesterday in San Jose and seeing how long the line was, so we decided to come early.
You were watching ABC 7.
Yes.
Awesome. It was here 10 years ago, and now we got our kids with us. It's pretty cool.
But you're not a 49ers fan.
No, I hate the 49ers.
What? Yeah. What type of language is that?
I hate them.
It's a bad language for a guy who lives in San Francisco.
There's NFL history here for everyone and every team, with all the Super Bowl rings on display. This will inspire you. On the left side, flag football, and I recruited somebody for this part. Ready?
Can you catch?
Hey. How dare Larry ask me? I showed him.
Well, that was a fun assignment. The Super Bowl experience runs through Saturday. Now, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Speaking of the Super Bowl, it has increasingly become an inclusive event. NPR's Morning Edition looks into ways blind and low vision people enjoy live events like the Super Bowl. And KPBS Midday Edition is highlighting San Diego's arts scene with the weekend preview. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating, air, restoration, and flood services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit BillHowe.com. And by the Conrad Trebas Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.